Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Lipsky, Chair of International Economics at the Atlantic Council and Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Geoeconomics Center. And it is a pleasure to have you with us today for this virtual event hosted in partnership with the Scowcroft Center for Middle East Security Initiative and the Atlantic Council's Middle East programs. Today's special event will feature a conversation with Mr. Noach Hacker, Minister for Economic Affairs at the Israeli Embassy, who will discuss with us the state of play of the Israeli economy amidst ongoing conflicts. In today's event, we aim to have an in-depth conversation on the Israeli economy and highlight its resilience through the wars over the past 2 years. As many of you are aware, since October 2023, Israel has been engaged in a three-pronged war, with Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the southwest, and Iran on the eastern front. Despite the significant economic shocks, including for the labor force, Israel's economy has continued to grow at a steady pace. The shekel has strengthened. The IMF projects that Israel's GDP growth for 2025 will be around 3.2%. This event is part of a broader series of our events at the Atlantic Council featuring ministers from around the world who wish to share their insights on their country's economic outlooks. Twice a year, the Geoeconomic Center, in partnership with the 16 programs and centers at the Atlantic Council, hosts ministers in Washington, D.C. for the IMF World Bank spring and annual meetings, a series of high-level events with finance ministers and central bank governors and economy ministers, something we'll continue this October here in Washington. Now, many predicted a different outcome for the Israeli economy after the outbreak of war. However, last year, The Economist ranked Israel as the sixth best performing economy in the world, with the OECD noting that sound fiscal position before management and a resilient financial system, as well as strong growth potential, owing to high employment rates and a vibrant high-tech sector. So these are the issues we will dig into today with the minister. We want to hear your questions, so please submit them online. We'll get to as many as we can. But first, Minister, the floor is yours for how you see the Israeli economy, and then I'll follow with my questions. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me and for this important event. I'll just take a little bit of what you said and just tell you our point of view of things. You talked about a three front war. We're talking about a lot more. And you only mentioned like the usual, let's say, conflicts, but this war was an economic war also. We had Houthis in the Red Sea still trying to prevent trade from coming to Israel. We had Turkey boycotting Israel. They were a big trading partner of ours just 2 years ago. So we see it as a multi-front war. Of course, a very, very significant one. I would say, at least economically, the most significant war that we have experienced, let's say, in the last several decades. And as you said, the expectation was the Israeli economy to react as economies react to war, with some negative outcomes. And even because it's a lot of people said Israel won't be able to sustain a long war. You're only built for short wars, but our economy is very stable and very strong. You mentioned what the report said about Israel's economy coming into this war. I think people need to understand that as you prepare for extreme situations, Israel's economy was prepared for these extreme situations. That wasn't by accident. It's not that we planned this, but we knew something like this could happen, something very meaningful on the geopolitical front. And that's why we've been keeping for years now, for 20 years or more, a very, very strict fiscal policy in order to reduce our debt to GDP. And we got to actually an all-time low for us at 59% debt to GDP ratio on October 6th, just before October 7th. If I'll ask you what was the deficit of the Israeli economy in 2022, Israel didn't have a deficit in 2022. We had a surplus, right? We had growth, 6% coming out of COVID. The economy was very, very strong. Our debt management is very, very unique in the sense that only 15% of our debt is foreign debt, and that's about $50 billion. And against that foreign debt, we keep $230 billion in foreign exchange reserves. And that's why you hear a lot from rating companies that our stability is very strong and there's no chance Israel is not going to be stable financially. While they're saying that the rating is coming down, they'll mention again and again and again the stability of the financial system in Israel because of this management. So I think that's why, you said sometimes it surprises people. The third day of the war with Iran, now the 12-day war, third day was a Monday, or fourth of the third day, and on every Monday, the accountant general in Israel issues out bonds for Israel to raise money for the government. The demand on that third day, fourth day of war was 4 times as much the amount that the government of Israel issued. During the worst, the worst scenario, a direct war with Iran, missiles falling in Israel, you won't be able to imagine a worse geopolitical event, and you see the strength of the Israeli economy and the belief, I think, that investors have now after 2 years of war to see that the Israeli economy is very strong and very stable. And that's something people need to understand because it's against what you would think. It's not like the common thing to think that Israel, I'll just throw figures at you so you understand what I'm saying. Since October 6th, just after October 7th, our stock market fell about 15%. But since October 6th, if I take October 6th till today, Israel Stock Exchange went up 70%. 70, which is huge during multi-front war. The shekel is now stronger than it was before October 7 by 13%. So I think we've shown the investors, the world financial markets, that we're very strong, very stable, and we don't only survive wars, we grow through them, and we come back on the other side stronger than we were before.
Thank you. I think there's a really helpful overview of the economic data and where Israel was pre-October 7th, which is incredibly important to understand, and then where Israel's been over the past 2.5 years. I want to talk a little bit, you talked about the fiscal side. I wanted to talk about the central bank side because I think an untold story about this are the buffers, the foreign exchange reserves that the central bank had going into the crisis, how you see that situation now, how it's helped navigate through the crisis, and where you think those should be going in the medium term.
So for sure, if you're a foreign investor and you want to consider investing in Israel and you hear all these geopolitical risks, you need to know that no matter what, you're going to get your money back. And I think when you see these kinds of amounts of foreign exchange reserves against that low amount of foreign debt, you get the sense that no matter what, you're going to get your money back from the government of Israel, and with interest. So I think it's very important. And we see the importance of it now because the perception of risk on Israel, at least after October 7th, was very, very high. We saw it also in risk indexes on the Israeli economy went up. But you need to understand something else. We have never had a problem throughout this war raising money for Israel. Never. Because of these foreign exchange reserves. So the amount of them is still a question. You're saying if we'll need to figure out, I think, what will happen now in the Israeli economy, but also with other people looking at the Israeli economy or rating the Israeli economy, we need to understand if we really dealt with one of the biggest risks, the geopolitical risks that was hold over the Israeli economy, and that's Iran, right? Because when you think on the Israeli economy, everybody says it's growing fast. You have a great high-tech sector. Everything's working well. You have those policies in place, fiscal policy, monetary policy, but then you have the geopolitical risk. And if we can show the world what we believe to be true, that now, after a lot of time that we didn't deal with it, we have dealt with many of the geopolitical risks that are held against the Israeli economy, then maybe we can start doing some really major shifts or major changes in policy. But first, we need everybody to recognize that. And I believe that in the next couple of months, we'll hear about a lot of changes that will support this perception.
Well, let me follow up on that and ask about the geopolitical risk. Is that how you see what's happening in the credit rating agencies now, Moody's and Fitch, and concerns raised about sovereign credit and downgrade? Of course, we have our own downgrade in the US for different reasons, fiscal reasons here in the US. But I'm wondering how you, one, see those downgrades from the credit rating agencies and how you think Israel can reverse that or get the credit rating agencies to reassess that position.
So let me tell you what I think about it, right? They have their analysis, their predictions, but we see over this war that Israel is outperforming on every aspect of their predictions. Either it's growth, in 2024, a year of growth, we've been growing. We had a positive growth of 1%. There were rating companies that thought that Israel is not going to grow in that year. This first quarter of 2025, 3.5% growth in the Israeli economy, which is very significant. I think it doesn't get the recognition it should get from rating companies. But also you see another thing. You see and another prediction that debt to GDP will go over 70% in Israel. We're still lower. We're at 68% because we know how to manage our fiscal policy. 20% increase in government revenues in this 6 months beginning in January 2025. So I think there's a lot of good data. And even the rating companies, which you saw their immediate reports during the 12-day war, they're beginning saying, look, this is the worst case scenario we predicted before. So we were supposed to downgrade Israel again, but we're not. And I think that was important to notice. They said we're not going to downgrade Israel again, even though the worst scenario has realized. And that's because you see the outcome of it. You see Israel strong. You see Israel actually dealing with the risk, the geopolitical risk. And I think some of them mention it, that when you see the Iranian axis not working as you thought it would work as a rating company, as a risk towards Israel, then you understand that something has changed. I believe that we're going to see change. And as I said, you see investors, private investors, investing a lot in Israel. We had a great first half of 2025 in high-tech investments. We have a great year in our stock markets. So I think what we're seeing is some kind of we need to tell a new story, because the old story about the Israeli economy doesn't work. You're saying, look, they have so many geopolitical risks, and now you have to tell a new story because you see what's exactly happening to the economy. And I think that's what we're going to see from rating companies. They're going to understand this change, and then we're going to see us back in where we should be, rated higher than we are now.
And are you in constant communication with them? What is that process like with the ratings companies?
So for sure, there's a lot of conversation between the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Israel, and those rating companies. They get, of course, whatever data they need from us to complete their reports. They know our understanding of things, where we see things. We believe that Israel is undervalued in the rating companies' reports. But I really believe that we're going to see in the next couple of months a change in that. But even I think you see that direction while they're saying, look, there's a negative outcome or negative prediction for the Israeli rating, and then not following up on that negative direction, even though the geopolitical risk, actually the worst scenario has just been realized.
I want to talk about the budget for a few minutes. You spoke about the surplus going into the war. Of course, now, given everything that's going on, I think the budget deficit coming in was about 5% of GDP for 2025. And I know there's some measures that have been set, VAT and otherwise, to offset that. And I'm wondering where you see things in terms of the budget and the deficit so far. We're halfway through the year, essentially, in 25, and where you see things landing at the end of the year from a budget and deficit perspective.
So I have to explain just before that, as I said, you manage your fiscal policy in order to deal with extreme situations. You see, most developed countries, OECD countries, are about 100% at the GDP. That area. Israel's been keeping very low, 60%. Even now, during war, 68%. It's compared to other countries, we're very low. And that's because we want to make sure that when we do need the money to spend, either on defense needs or civilian needs because of the war, if it's business, small businesses, or even housing for people that lost their homes or were evacuated because of the war. So we need to manage that. And we see now that after 2 years of increased spending on defense and also on civilian costs, we're in a good place. We're in a good place, 68%, 69% at the GDP. We're trying to keep that going, now the deficit is set in this budget on 4.9. The last execution report of the budget that was released, I think 2 weeks ago, we have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter that we issue out on all these reports that are coming on the Israeli economy. When they're published, we just send it to everyone that wants. So you see that the actual budget execution is very close to the prediction of the budget. We're talking about 4.95%. For now, it seems like we can manage that, even though the 12-day war, which wasn't planned in the budget to begin with on January. I think that has to do with another thing that we have in Israel in order to keep this fiscal stability going. I don't know if you know about it. We have an insurance for damages, war damages in Israel. It's war damages or extreme damages from earthquake and such. It's called the property fund, and that was filled before October 7th, and it got refilled during these year and a half. And now, after all the damages from the missiles from Iran, we can say that all of the expenditure coming to fund these repairs or rebuilding is coming through that fund, and it has enough money to do it. It's about 10 billion shekels. So we feel very comfortable in us saying we're going to keep the deficit till the end of the year in about 5%, 4.9%. That's the direction we're going, and we feel very comfortable with that.
And tax policy, so far, you feel comfortable with where things are keeping through the rest of the year?
Sure. You see now, I think a lot of people are surprised to see that government revenues went up 20% this first half of 2025, which is very significant, right? There were some policy changes even last year, again, mostly for us to show the world that we are very, very committed to these fiscal responsibility policies. And we saw it with VAT going up 1%, but we also saw it in other incomes of the government going up. Some, I won't get into details, but a dividend incentive to companies to withdraw their dividends from companies, and then we got another income coming in from those dividends. So we feel very comfortable now.
So I wanted to ask, we just talked about the budget this year, but long-term investment. Obviously, the Israeli economy, like every economy in the world, wants to make strategic investments in infrastructure and IT and healthcare and education. How do you balance the short-term pressures of the wars and the aftermath and the rebuilding, which is obviously going to be a huge financial burden, versus these investments that needed to be done pre-war and still need to be done for the Israeli economy long term?
So I think you touched a significant issue in Israel. We are in need of many infrastructure. War or not war, regular times, we're a young country in need of a lot of, we're growing very fast, our population is growing, and we need a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment in infrastructure. But we're relying on the private sector to manage that. We're issuing out projects, PPP projects of partnership between the private and the public sector, and it works. That's the way we see it. We see it in most of the infrastructure in Israel. I can tell you that where government funds are needed, now we have enough to put what we need, but a lot of the money comes in through private investment. And that's also something we're seeing this first half year, that private money is coming to Israel in a very significant way. We see it a lot in high tech, but it's not only high tech. And I think that's what we're going to see in infrastructure as well. We did have a lot of issues because of this war with workers, with supply of workers, construction workers, most of them because of the decision, the security decision not to allow in Palestinian workers after October 7th because of the negative security outcomes it creates. But then we're starting to find solutions for that, either other foreign workers from other places around the world, or some Israeli workers going to fill those positions that are now needed more than before. And I think we're starting to see a change in that as well. It was hard to manage, but now we feel again more comfortable with that as well. And you're probably going to see a huge boost of infrastructure in Israel in the next couple of years.
Okay, that's interesting and something we'll follow here at the Geoeconomic Center. You touched on the labor market, and I wanted to ask you about this. This is one of the most interesting things to me about the Israeli economy since October 7th. If you think about a country with mandatory military service, the number of people who have been called up and engaged in the army in one way, shape, or form since October 7th, but the fact you haven't seen the kind of disruptions an economist might expect in the labor market, what it's done to productivity. How do you explain that? Because so many people have been out of their typical workforce jobs, even in the immediate aftermath, but certainly, if less so, over the past year and a half since October 7th. How do we reconcile those two in the Israeli economy?
So I think you need to get to know more Israelis in order to understand that, because it's really the story of Israel. I know it sounds like unreal, but I always tell the story. My team always are mad at me that I tell the same story, but it's a very significant story for me. My son is in a math program in Israel. He's learning on Zoom, and one day I'm walking by his room and I'm seeing a tank go by, and I'm like, "Aren't you learning math?" And he's like, "Yeah, the math teacher is in reserves. He's teaching us from reserves." And I think you need to understand that people go to reserve service, but they're still working. When we say the Israeli high-tech delivers no matter what, it's because the reserves we work tents set up for people to connect to their companies, connect to their customers, connect to their investors around the world, and they're still working. That's not taking care of all the productivity, of course, but you need to understand another thing. Most of the reserves are now at a stage that a lot of them are not yet in the workforce. They're students or other positions, and because they're younger. And then what you get is the first reaction of the job market, the labor market, is less significant. Of course, we need to see that coming to an end in order for that not to cause any problems going forward. But for now, I think we see the effects of it, and they're not too hard on the economy. The most significant effect on the labor sector was the first month after October 7th, where all the schools were closed. The schools were closed because of missiles falling on every city in Israel, and then parents had to stay home with their kids. And when one of the parents is in reserves and the other parent is with the kid, nobody is working. And I think that was a significant month. Most of the damage caused to the Israeli economy is from that.
That's helpful explanation. Thank you. I want to get to some online questions we have. I'll try to get to as many as we can. We have about 15 minutes left. First one is about some of the response and economic pressure toward Israel. So I'll read the question here. In light of recent agreement signed by 26 nations calling for an end to the war in Gaza, there have been growing international discussions, though still limited, about potential economic measures, including boycotts. Has the Israeli government experienced any financial or economic pressures from this? And what strategies are you pursuing in the Israeli government to mitigate potential costs associated with the potential economic pressure coming from partners?
So first of all, we have experienced boycotts on Israel during this war. I think the most significant one was from Turkey. But the reports now of the Bank of Israel of how these events, economic events, actually affected Israel's economy. We see, let's say, in the Turkey boycott, that all trade was shifted to other places, some of them Abraham Accord countries, shifted to other places, and we see prices remaining the same. That means that the actual effect of that boycott on the Israeli economy wasn't significant. We see the same thing with the Red Sea blockage of ships getting to Eilat port. But and that again, because of the alternative the Israeli the economy has, it doesn't create a very big effect. You're right that there's some partners that can make a bigger effect, but we have a lot of very good friends in Europe also that I believe that won't allow these things to happen. And just before we started this conversation, I saw a release on Israeli press that one of the European countries now signed the biggest defense export deal, one deal that we had until now. So I believe that countries will want to trade with Israel, will continue to trade with Israel, and this threat is not really something that's going to happen, at least not in the foreseeable future.
Okay, so next question I want to get to is about reconstruction costs. You talked about some of the damage from the war with Iran. How are you thinking about, from a financial perspective, the economic cost of reconstruction in Gaza and what Israel's participation in that will be? Obviously, that will be global. There'll be World Bank. There'll be international financial institutions involved. But when you think about it from a budget and economic perspective, the major costs that are coming in the years ahead, how is that factored in?
So I'll tell you what we're looking at when we talk about these kinds of things, because we don't have estimates of amounts or something like that. But I think one of the things that are more concerning us is not the amounts of money coming in, it's the system. How is this going to happen? And I think we found now, I don't know if you know this about this program, but I think it's one of the most interesting programs the World Bank has now. It's called Funds Chain. It's a new pilot system they initiated in 8 projects last year, and now planning this year to be around 200, 300 projects. When you use a blockchain system to manage World Bank projects, and that actually prevents money from going out of the project into, let's say, terror financing or people we don't want the money to get to. And that makes sure that the monies that go into a project, an infrastructure project or whatever, stays in that project. And I think that's what we are more concerned about. We want to see that all the funds coming in to rebuild, which can be good money, of course, just make sure it goes where it needs to go and doesn't go to negative forces either in Gaza or other places. And I think to see the World Bank understanding that and trying to react to that concern, it's not an Israeli concern, it's a World Bank concern, right? They want to make sure that the funds they put into a project goes into the project. They've been trying this pilot in Moldova, the Philippines, Kenya. It's not a Gaza thing, but I think using that in places like Gaza can actually allow us to be less concerned with all these projects that are about to come.
I'm glad you raised that. That's an issue we focus on at the Geoeconomics Center, blockchain technology. And as you said, this has been used around the world. We've seen this in Ukraine in reconstruction efforts. And my colleague Ananya Kumar, I'll plug her piece here, has written about the potential for use of blockchain both in the West Bank and Gaza. And so I think it's an important issue and obviously something the World Bank's heavily invested in. I want to turn to a question about Egypt here, and I'll read the question. Given the prolonged closure of the Rafah border and recent disruptions of Israeli energy exports to Egypt, how is Israel working to stabilize the economic relationship with Cairo? Are there efforts underway to rebuild mutual trust and mitigate some of the economic fallout between the two countries?
So I think most of the connection between about the energy is private sector, and the last time I heard about it was, I think, a week or two ago. It's going well. I can tell you that I believe after seeing the effect of the Abraham Accords, which every year now, it's been a record year in trade with our Abraham Accord partners. I think that when we get, and I hope that we will, to a new structure of relationships in our region, not only the Abraham Accords, the current Abraham Accords, but a new other countries coming into those agreements. I think that will have a positive effect also on our peace partners in Egypt, in Jordan, and trade with them will also go up. So I believe that we're going to see a change in that. It will take some time, but when we'll get that new order that we're looking for, with more and more countries coming into the Abraham Accords, normalizing their relationships with Israel, I think that will have a positive effect on our peace partners and our neighbors.
So this is a bit of a change of topic here. Another question we got. I don't know if you want to weigh in on this or not, but I'll ask it. What are your views on the value of central bank independence?
Look, Israel has been burned pretty bad from what happens when you don't have an independent central bank. The 80s was a very tough time in the Israeli economy. So I think generally Israel believes in that fully. And even though we don't always agree with our central bank, we understand, of course, the importance of the independence of the central bank. And I have to say that my first position was in the Israeli central bank, so I'm not that objective about it.
That's fair. And we know policymakers often disagree with their central banks all over the world. It's a common phenomenon. I want to turn to Syria. We have a question on Syria and potential normalization with the new government in Syria. Obviously, we know what's happened over the past 2 weeks from the military side, but how do you see long-term the potential here and the economic opportunities that could come with normalization down the road?
So, of course, I see, look, I don't want to get into the politics of it or where we stand now, but let's say the economic potential of these kinds of relationships. First of all, for the Israeli economy, it's more demand, right? We're talking about billions of new customers. But I think when you take a look at a country that is struggling to develop its economy, to develop their infrastructure, in need of investments, of course, they can benefit from an economic relationship or strengthening economic relationship with a very strong economy that is just over the border, a few meters away. So I think there's a lot to gain economically from that connection. But again, there's a lot of strategic issues going on now, and we'll see where it ends up.
So back to the IMF, we talked about IMF projections. There's a question here about IMF surveillance. We haven't had Article 4 since the outbreak of war. Those who don't know, we can explain, Minister, what this is and why it's important. But the question is, do you think those could resume in the near future? Have you had conversations with the IMF? Could the IMF re-engage in its Article 4s in the year to come?
Sure, we even had a visit this in the beginning of 2025. It was supposed to continue. There were some issues. I think it was just on the 12 days of the Iranian attack or something like that, if I remember correctly. And we have struggled with airlines canceling flight to Israel. Now they're coming back, but so I believe it's going to happen. There's a lot of scheduling this because there's a lot of countries to research, but I believe we're going to see that as well. I can't tell you a specific date, but I know everybody's working on it.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's something we'll look forward to here at the council. So let me get to one more question if we can, and then I'll turn to you for closing remarks. Israel's become a significant exporter of natural gas in recent years, including regional partners, Egypt and Jordan. We talked about energy a little bit with Egypt a minute ago. In light of the ongoing tensions, how's the government working to maintain and expand those export relationships? And are there other markets you're looking at now to expand potential energy exports?
So the short answer is yes. And the long question is that I can't really talk about it. But again, our energy sector is a private sector. It's a lot to do with what the private sector's relationships or connections are to other markets. And we do have some restrictions on exports because we want to make sure the Israeli market has its own share of natural gas and benefits from that as well. So we have some guidelines, but most of the transactions there are business projects. But again, you need to follow our economy and keep in touch in order to see where this is going.
Okay, well, we will do that. You've been generous with your time today going in and out of the details of the Israeli economy. Minister, I want to turn to you for any concluding thoughts, what you'd like to leave us with to look forward to in the months ahead as we head into the IMF World Bank meetings here in October, where we hope to host you again.
Thank you very much. So I can say that we have a lot of perceptions on the Israeli economy, and most of them are negative. And I think when you start to look at the actual data, what's really going on in the economy, and even reports, as you mentioned, The Economist rating Israel one of the top economies in the world in 2024, which is a full year of war, like a multi-front war in Israel. How does that happen? You need to understand the strength of the Israeli economy, the resilience of the Israeli economy, and the ability of the Israeli economy to grow and expand its reach, either its high-tech exports or other areas. And I think when you see that, you really understand what it means to be an Israeli, to what's our true character, that we're very dedicated to what we're doing. We're not giving up. And I think that's what we're seeing now in the economic data as well. The projections for the Israeli economy in 2026, you mentioned IMF, but if you look at the OECD projections, we're talking about 5.5% growth. 5.5% growth in 2026. Our projections in Israel are about 5%. The Ministry of Finance and Bank of Israel are talking about 5% growth. So I think we have a very bright future ahead of us. And I hope you all continue to follow what's happening in the Israeli economy and see that as well.
Minister Noach Hacker, thank you for joining us today, and thank you everyone for being part of this event. Please continue to follow the work of the Atlantic Council across the Geoeconomic Center, the Middle East Center, the Scowcroft Center, as we continue to navigate these difficult, uncertain, and challenging times. We wish everyone a pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you very much.